Let's jump right in, shall we? Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating concept, one that literally explains the invisible forces shaping our entire world. It's called the Overton Window of political possibility. If you've ever found yourself, frustrated by how slow politics moves, or if you're just genuinely curious about how real change actually happens in society, well, this explainer is absolutely for you. I mean, ever wonder how politicians actually decide which policies they're going to back? Think about it. Have you ever noticed how a politician can champion a certain policy in one country and win by a total landslide, but if someone tried that exact same policy somewhere else, it would be pure electoral suicide? Like, why does an idea take off in one place or era and just crash and burn in another? Well, spoiler alert, it's not just about a politician's personal charm. It all comes down to a hidden boundary.
Which brings us to Section 1, the political possibility problem.
Here's the crux of the issue. Politicians aren't really free agents. They can't just wake up and enact whatever policies they personally like. Instead, they generally stick to pursuing policies that are already widely accepted by society. And the reason why is pretty simple, right? They want to keep their jobs. They are fundamentally boxed in by what everyday people deem to be a legitimate option. If they step too far outside that invisible boundary, they run the massive risk of alienating the public and just totally losing their popular support.
So how do we actually map out this boundary? Let's look at Section 2, defining the Overton window.
This whole concept was coined back in the mid-1990s by the late Joseph P. Overton. He was the senior vice president at the Mackinac Center for Public Policy, and he came up with this brilliant model to understand how society's ideas shift over time and how those shifts ultimately steer our politics. Basically, the idea is that at any given moment, there's a relatively narrow window, a limited range of policy ideas that the general public is actually willing to stomach.
And this creates a pretty stark divide in our political landscape. On the inside of the window, you have the safe zone. These are policies viewed as legitimate and popular. A politician can back these without breaking a sweat, But then, on the outside of the window, you have the exiled ideas. Supporting these is seen as incredibly risky, totally unacceptable, or like we said, electoral suicide. That window literally dictates what is possible and what is completely unthinkable.
Let's anchor this with a real-world example. Section 3, the education policy spectrum. So most of us agree that educating kids is a good thing, right? But exactly how we do it, that is a massive spectrum. On one extreme end, you've got total federal control, like every student must attend a federally run school. Then swing all the way to the absolute opposite end and you have zero government involvement. No mandatory attendance, no public funding, nothing. Now notice how virtually no mainline politician today is endorsing either of those extremes. Why? Because right now both of those sit completely outside the Overton window. Instead, the politically viable stuff lives right in the middle ground. We're talking about things like tax-funded public school districts, regulated private schools, or independent public charter schools. For most voters today, these sit safely inside that window. Politicians will argue all day long about the specifics of these middle ground options because it's safe. They can fiercely debate a charter school versus a traditional public school without risking their entire career because society already accepts both as legitimate.
But here's the really interesting part. This window isn't permanently glued in place. Section 4, how the window shifts. The window is constantly moving. It expands, it shrinks, it shifts left and right as our societal norms evolve. Just look at alcohol. Back during the Prohibition era, making it a federal crime to buy a beer was planted firmly inside the window. It was the law of the land. But today, we look back at Prohibition as a total political folly. I mean, imagine a politician campaigning today on a promise to ban alcohol. They wouldn't get a single vote at the local pub. The window completely shifted, leaving Prohibition out in the cold. Now, it's really important to note that because this window reflects public belief and not necessarily objective truth, it can be shifted by mistakes or false narratives just as easily as by cold, hard facts. It moves based on what the public believes at the time. For example, a massive underestimate of the projected costs actually helped shift the window to create the Medicare program back in the 1960s. Similarly, the widespread, though false, belief that weapons of mass destruction would be found in Iraq played a huge role in building the societal support that made the Iraq War a politically viable option at the time. So, if the window moves, who is actually doing the pushing? Let's get into Section 5. Who actually drives change?
Okay, get ready for a massive paradigm shift, because this is where it gets really good. According to the model, politicians are actually way more followers than they are leaders. We always tend to sit around waiting for some brave politician to swoop in and change the world, but the reality? Politicians rarely move the window themselves. It's just too risky for them. The people who actually push the window are us. It's our everyday social institutions, families, workplaces, the media, churches, think tanks. These are the forces that slowly establish our societal norms. They draw the boundary lines that the politicians eventually just follow.
And honestly, that gives us an incredibly clear blueprint for how to enact real change. If you're passionate about a policy that currently sits way outside the window, going straight to a politician is probably a losing battle. You have to follow the steps. Step 1. You start at the ground level, with everyday people. Step 2. You slowly build societal support for the idea through your community and local institutions. You literally have to shift the culture first. Because once that culture shifts and your idea takes root, well, step 3 happens almost automatically. The politicians will eventually jump on board, because suddenly, supporting your idea has become the safe, popular thing to do.
Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to wrap up our explainer today. Take a look at the world around you right now. What policies, things that might seem completely impossible or totally extreme today, might be sitting safely inside the Overton window tomorrow? History guarantees us that the window is going to move. The only question is, who's going to be the one to push it? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, keep your eyes on the window.